Don't have a spiritual life, you're never going to stop and ask any questions. You're just going to plow through life, and you're going to see everything that happens to you as just a random event. I don't believe that anything is random. I think everything that happens to us is meant to happen to us, to teach us some kind of a lesson.
Madonna has finally revealed the real reason she walked away from her 8-year marriage to Guy Ritchie, and the truth is far more painful and unexpected than anyone imagined. For years, tabloids speculated endlessly about cultural clashes, lifestyle differences, arguments about fame, and the pressure of living in the spotlight. Still, according to Madonna herself, the real breaking point wasn't loud or dramatic. It wasn't about scandals or explosive fights. It was something quieter, something far more devastating. The slow, steady realization that she was disappearing inside a life that didn't feel like her own. In her deeply revealing 2019 conversation with Howard Stern, Madonna admitted she had been unhappy for a long time in her marriage. Still, she also admitted something even more vulnerable. She had been trying to become a version of herself she thought Guy wanted. A quieter woman, a more refined woman, a woman who toned herself down. For someone who built an entire career on defying expectations and refusing to shrink for anyone, that confession changed everything about how people understood their divorce. To understand why this revelation matters, you have to go back to the beginning, before the fairy tale wedding, before the cultural clashes, before the compromises that eventually suffocated one of the most powerful women in modern music. When Madonna met Guy Ritchie at a party hosted by Sting and Trudy Styler in 1998, she was 40 years old and undeniably at the top of her world. With 2 decades of reinvention behind her, global tours, and more than $300 million to her name. She was the queen of pop, untouchable, unstoppable, unapologetic. Guy, on the other hand, was 30 years old, charming, witty, talented, ambitious, and still early in his rise. He had directed Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and was celebrated as a new British film voice. But he was nowhere near Madonna's level of fame or power. Their chemistry was instant, their romance fast, and by August 2000, their son Rocco was born, followed by a December wedding at Scotland's majestic Skibo Castle, which the world saw as glamorous, artistic, and wildly romantic. The American pop icon joining forces with the British film director in a marriage that blended fame, creativity, and 2 different worlds. But Madonna would later admit the problem started almost immediately. The glamour the world saw was never the truth behind closed doors. In her Howard Stern interview, she revealed she had been unhappy for years, but never said it because she was protecting her marriage, and she admitted something shocking even to her most loyal fans. She tried to change herself to make the relationship work, not in small ways, not in ways couples naturally adapt, but in deep, fundamental ways that chipped away at who she was. She tried to become more British in manner and tone. She softened her American directness. She tried to fit into Guy's world of understated success, quiet gatherings, and emotional reserve. She dimmed her expressive nature, her artistic fire, her boldness, her ambition traits that built her identity. For 8 years, she lived like that, monitoring her voice, her mood, her choices, her drive just to maintain peace. She attended the quiet British social gatherings, played her part, and tried to fit in. But little by little, she felt herself fading, becoming someone smaller, quieter, someone she didn't recognize. Meanwhile, Guy rarely talked about adapting to her world. In a 2010 Details interview, he described their marriage as a soap opera and said living in her fame was difficult, but he never spoke of sacrificing the way she did. And Madonna later implied this imbalance was one of the quiet truths that broke her spirit. She began to feel like she needed to apologize for her success and power things she once celebrated in herself. And the most painful realization was this: the man she married didn't love the woman she truly was, but the version she created to fit his comfort. The breaking point wasn't a fight, it was internal collapse. She realized she was losing herself entirely. She felt like a stranger in her own skin, quieter, more conventional, less ambitious. She wasn't herself, and she wasn't happy. During this time, she released Hard Candy in 2008, and though she never explicitly said the songs were about Guy, the themes of confinement and breaking free made the message obvious. And when she finally decided to leave, she didn't feel sadness, she felt relief. Relief that she could breathe again. Relief that she didn't have to pretend. Relief that she could stop fighting her own nature. But the story took a heartbreaking turn when their son Rocco made a decision that shook her to her core. In 2015, 7 years after the divorce, Rocco, then 15, chose to live with his father in London full-time. The custody battle that followed was public and brutal. Madonna fought desperately. But the court allowed Rocco to stay with Guy. For Madonna, this loss was unbearable. She posted emotional Instagram messages, including one saying her son was torn from my arms, and she never stopped fighting for him. Reports later revealed Rocco told the court he felt normal. With Guy, that life with his father was quiet, private, and peaceful, and he could just be a kid without the pressure of being Madonna's son. This realization forced Madonna to confront a painful truth. Guy's desire for privacy wasn't wrong, but it wasn't hers, and no matter how hard she tried, she could never be the woman he needed without losing the woman she truly was. In her 2021 British Vogue interview, she reflected on the pain of losing Rocco and the complicated truth behind her marriage, saying, "Guy wasn't wrong for wanting a quieter life. He was wrong for expecting her to become someone else, to give it to him." After the divorce, their lives diverged in ways that proved how incompatible they really were. Guy remarried in 2015, built a large family, embraced privacy, and found stability. Madonna, meanwhile, exploded back into her full self. Her 2012 album, MDNA, was bold, emotional, personal. Her tours became more theatrical. She embraced her creativity again, as if reclaiming all the pieces she had boxed away. She adopted 4 children, built a global, expressive, unconventional family reflecting her values, and dated younger men who accepted her as she was. Relationships critics mocked, but Madonna didn't care, because she wasn't bending for anyone anymore. Her work became more personal, her persona louder and freer, and her identity fully restored. When you look at the timeline, the interviews, the custody battle, the shift in their post-divorce lives, it becomes painfully clear. Madonna didn't leave Guy because she didn't love him. She left because continuing the marriage meant disappearing to keep him comfortable. There is the difference between healthy compromise and self-erasure. One helps relationships grow, the other destroys the person inside them. Madonna's story is more than a celebrity breakup. It is a warning about shrinking yourself for love. At first, it seems small, a softened tone, a quieter opinion, a toned-down ambition. But over time, those sacrifices become the threads that unravel who you are. Madonna, the symbol of strength and unapologetic identity, found herself apologizing for everything that made her who she was. And when she finally stopped compromising, the cost was enormous, but so was the freedom. What she learned is universal. You cannot build a real relationship on a fake version of yourself, nor can you sustain love while suffocating your own nature, and you cannot live a life that requires you to disappear. The tragedy of her marriage wasn't that it ended, it was that it took 8 years to admit she was living as someone she wasn't. And the victory wasn't the divorce, it was the moment she returned to herself. So now the question becomes, was she right? Should she have kept fighting? Or was choosing herself the only path forward? And how do you recognize when compromise becomes self-erasure? Because Madonna's story isn't just about fame or marriage, it's about the moment you choose between being loved for who you pretend to be or demanding to be loved for who you truly are.